In the 10th letter of Screwtape to Wormwood, he talks about, social vanity. He talks about the trap that is kind of inherent in, society and us going out and meeting people and getting to know others. There's an inherent trap in that can cause us to, kind of slip up. You see, Screwtape is very excited by, this patient's new acquaintances because they're modern, they're superficial, they're steeped in jargon. They're just the sort of people that he finds, useful in order to spring the trap on the patient that Wormwood is working on. And that trap, it's there, it can be there because of something that Screwtape has already explained. He talked about the law of undulation, if you can say that 10 times fast, about how, things kind of change, and it's because we are both spirit as well as matter. Well, here's another kind of effect of the fact that we are spirit and matter. The fact that we can hide our spirit. We can hide how we're truly feeling. We can hide how we're truly thinking. We can hide, what is truly, spiritually, the case about you or about me. We can hide that from each other because our bodies can provide, a sort of mask. Now, we know that this is not the way things ought to be. We know that this isn't how things are even going to be in heaven. When God created the body, he created it not to mask the soul, but to actually be a perfect conveyance of it, to be a perfect means of communicating our soul to others and to the world. That's what heaven will be like, whatever that means. We don't really know exactly how that would work, that our soul would be a perfect means of communicating how we're truly feeling and who we truly are. We're not used to that. Instead, we live in this broken world where what we feel and what we think can be hidden from the people that are around us. We can do things with our look. We can do things with our tones. We can do things with how we laugh or how we smile. And we can do that by, in a way that will deceive others. And this we do in order to, maybe be pleasant, maybe to be, in a sense, prudent about not showing someone and, if we're out and about in public, we don't want to necessarily show our most inner, deepest thoughts and feelings about things. So we might do it for that reason. We kind of put on that mask to be able to present ourselves to the world publicly. But we could also use that mask to fit in, to be accepted, to actually deceive, to deceive people into thinking that we are something that we're truly not. This is a betrayal of, who we truly are. And this is the sort of betrayal that Screwtape is telling Wormwood to really focus his attention towards, to get his patients to do just that with these new friends. And Screwtape gives Wormwood a few recommendations on how to do this. And I think each of those 4 recommendations that we get from this letter give us kind of 4 ways in which we can kind of guard ourselves against falling into that trap of, in a sense, deceiving others or living a double life. The first thing that we can do is we can identify this truly as a temptation. To think that actually us feeling good about ourselves because we're accepted is actually something that we can be tempted towards. That feeling of being accepted is really something that can serve the purposes of the demonic. And it's not just always simply good. It can be okay for us not to be accepted. It can be okay for us not to be liked. That's hard for us to accept. We think that we should always be liked. We think that we should always be accepted. But that's not the case. We have to be willing to, not be liked or not be accepted if that's truly what the situation calls for. And so the first thing to do is just to identify the fact that, hey, this can be good or bad, and it can be used as a temptation. The second thing is to quickly identify when we sense that we're leading a double life, when we sense that what we're doing in one aspect of our life is not something that we agree with in another aspect of our life. And so, Screwtape talks about how, when your patient goes away from the particular friends in question, he might have that clear-headed thinking that, hey, they aren't the sorts of people that I should be hanging out with. They aren't doing things, or they aren't speaking in ways that really conform with my own sense of values. And yet, even though you have those moments of clarity, you still kind of give in to go ahead and, living that double life anyway. But we are called to, identify those things. And if we do get a sense of, duplicity in our life, to call that out and to try to work that down. The third thing to do is to really be on guard about a particular sort of pride. The pride that kind of gives ourselves the ability to, be an exception to the rule. We sometimes want to excuse ourselves from one thing or another, thinking that in our pride we can manage it. This is where Screwtape is telling Wormwood to play into his patient and thinking that he is somehow better, he is somehow more complete, he's somehow more balanced or more complex, or just a better human being for being able to be in both worlds, for being able to be so duplicitous, being able to be a man of the world but also a man of religion, to be able to kneel next to the grocer, as well as going out on these extravagant parties. He thinks more of himself. And he gives himself kind of permission to live this double life, because he treats himself as an exception to the rule of, actually needing to be consistent, needing to actually be, who you truly are, and not be different sorts of people. And we sometimes can have that pride within our heart. We give ourselves an exception. Oh, why not? I deserve it. And then we put on the mask. But rather than putting on the mask, we're called to actually, be true to ourselves. And for that, we need humility. We don't need pride. And the last thing would be to recognize that in order to be a witness of, what we believe, in order to be a witness to truth, we have to actually be consistent. This is at the very end of the letter where Screwtape says, hey, actually try to tell your patient that maybe by being in these circumstances, he can in some way, shape, or form evangelize, or he can in some way, shape, or form, bring Christ to them. But bringing Christ to others doesn't mean that we ever compromise on our values. We can't, nor should we ever become, less Christian in order to appeal to those who aren't Christian. We shouldn't become less Catholic in order to appeal to those who are, not Catholic. We are called to uphold the values that are in our Catholic faith and to, be consistent with those and allow those things in their entirety, in their Catholicity, to truly be the means by which others are attracted into the fold. That others are actually being able to see and to experience what it truly means to live in Christ. We can't do that in part. We have to do it in whole. And we truly can only do it in whole if we're with one another, living together, supporting one another, and not going off by our own, thinking that we can do it ourselves. And that's all I got for letter 10. I'll be back with you in the next letter, letter 11.